Hi there, thanks for watching. My name's Christian, this is Shoosha, and today we're going to be reading you Cross Country Snow by Ernest Hemingway, which goes like this. The funicular car bucked once more and then stopped. It could not go farther. The snow drifted solidly across the track. The gale scouring the exposed surface of the mountain had swept the snow surface into a windboard crust. Nick, waxing his skis in the baggage car, pushed his boots into the toe irons and shut the clamp tight. He jumped from the car sideways onto the hard windboard, made a jump turn, and crouching and trailing his sticks, slipped in a rush down the slope. On the white below, George dipped and rose and dipped out of sight. The rush and the sudden swoop as he dropped down a steep undulation in the mountainside plucked Nick's mind out and left him only the wonderful flying, dropping sensation in his body. He rose to a slight uprun, and then the snow seemed to drop out from under him as he went down, down, faster and faster in a rush down the last long, steep slope. Crouching so he was almost sitting back on his skis, trying to keep the center of gravity low, the snow driving like a sandstorm, he knew the pace was too much. But he held it. He would not let go and spill. Then a patch of soft snow, left in a hollow by the wind, spilled him, and he went over and over in a clashing of skis, feeling like a shot rabbit, then stuck, his legs crossed, his skis sticking straight up and his nose and ears jammed full of snow. George stood a little farther down the slope, knocking the snow from his wind jacket with big slaps. "You took a beauty, Mike," he called to Nick. "That's lousy soft snow. It bagged me the same way." "What's it like over the khud?" Nick kicked his skis around as he lay on his back and stood up. "You've got to keep to your left. It's a good fast drop with a Christie at the bottom on account of a fence." "Wait a second, we'll take it together." "No, you come on and go first. I like to see you take the khuds." Nick Adams came up past George, big back and blonde head still faintly snowy. Then his skis started slipping at the edge and he swooped down, hissing in the crystalline powder snow and seeming to float up and drop down as he went up and down the billowing khuds. He held to his left, and at the end, as he rushed towards the fence, keeping his knees locked tight together and turning his body like tightening a screw, brought his skis sharply around to the right in a smother of snow and slowed into a loss of speed parallel to the hillside and the wire fence. He looked up the hill. George was coming down in telemark position, kneeling, one leg forward and bent, the other trailing, his sticks hanging like some insect's thin legs, kicking up puffs of snow as they touched the surface, and finally the whole kneeling, trailing figure coming around in a beautiful right curve, crouching, the legs shot forward and back, the body leaning out against the swing, the sticks accenting the curve like points of light, all in a wild cloud of snow. "I was afraid to Christie," George said. "The snow was too deep. You made a beauty." "I can't telemark with my leg," Nick said. Nick held down the top strand of the wire fence with his ski, and George slid over. Nick followed him down to the road. They thrust bent-kneed along the road into a pine forest. The road became polished ice, stained orange, and a tobacco yellow from the teams hauling logs. The skiers kept to the stretch of snow along the side. The road dipped sharply to a stream and then ran straight uphill. Through the woods they could see a long, low-eaved, weather-beaten building. Through the trees it was a faded yellow. Closer, the window frames were painted green. The paint was peeling. Nick knocked his clamps loose with one of his ski sticks and kicked off the skis. "We might as well carry them up here," he said. He climbed the steep road with the skis on his shoulder, kicking his heel nails into the icy footing. He heard George breathing and kicking in his heels just behind him. They stacked the skis against the side of the inn and slapped the snow off each other's trousers, stamped their boots clean, and went in. Inside, it was quite dark. A big porcelain stove shone in the corner of the room. There was a low ceiling. Smooth benches back of dark wine-stained tables were along each side of the rooms. 2 Swiss sat over their pipes and 2 decies of cloudy new wine next to the stove. The boys took off their jackets and sat against the wall on the other side of the stove. A voice in the next room stopped singing, and a girl in a blue apron came in through the door to see what they wanted to drink. "A bottle of Sion," Nick said. "Is that all right, Gidge?" "Sure," said George. "You know more about wine than I do. I like any of it." The girl went out. "There's nothing really can touch skiing, is there?" Nick said. "The way it feels when you first drop off on a long run." "Huh," said George. "It's too swell to talk about." The girl brought the wine in and they had trouble with the cork. Nick finally opened it. The girl went out and they heard her singing in German in the next room. "Those specks of cork in it don't matter," said Nick. "I wonder if she's got any cake." "Let's find out." The girl came in and Nick noticed that her apron covered swellingly her pregnancy. "I wonder why I didn't see that when she first came in," he thought. "What were you singing?" he asked her. "Opera, German opera." She did not care to discuss the subject. "We have some apple strudel if you want it." "Shoosha!" "What were you singing?" he asked her. "Opera, German opera." She did not care to discuss the subject. "We have some apple strudel if you want it." "She isn't so cordial, is she?" said George. "Oh well, she doesn't know us and she thought we were going to kid her about her singing maybe. She's from up where they speak German probably, and she's touchy about being here, and then she's got that baby coming without being married and she's touchy." "How do you know she isn't married?" "No ring? Hell, no girls get married around here till they're knocked up." The door came open and a gang of woodcutters from up the road came in, stamping their boots and steaming in the room. The waitress brought in 3 liters of new wine for the gang, and they sat at the 2 tables, smoking and quiet with their hats off, leaning back against the wall or forward on the table. Outside, the horses on the wood sledges made an occasional sharp jangle of bells as they tossed their heads. George and Nick were happy. They were fond of each other. They knew they had the run back home ahead of them. "When have you got to get back to school?" Nick asked. "Tonight," George answered. "I've got to get the 1040 from Montreux." "I wish you could stick over and we could do Den du Lys tomorrow." I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that. "I got to get educated," George said. "Gee, Mike, don't you wish we could just bum together? Take our skis and go on the train to where there was good running and then go up and put up at pubs and go right across the Oberland and up the Valais and all through the Engadine and just take repair kit and extra sweaters and pajamas in our rucksacks and not give a damn about school or anything?" "Yes, and go through the Schwarzwald that way. Gee, the swell places." "That's where you went fishing last summer, isn't it?" "Yes." They ate the strudel and drank the rest of the wine. George leaned back against the wall and shut his eyes. "Wine always makes me feel this way," he said. "Feel bad?" Nick asked. "No, I feel good, but funny." "I know," Nick said. "Sure," said George. "Should we have another bottle?" Nick asked. "Not for me," George said. They sat there, Nick leaning his elbows on the table, George slumped back against the wall. "Is Helen going to have a baby?" George said, coming down the table from the wall. "Yes." "When?" "Late next summer." "Are you glad?" "Yes. Now." "Will you go back to the States?" "I guess so." "Do you want to?" "No." "Does Helen?" "No." George sat silent. He looked at the empty bottle and the empty glasses. "It's hell, isn't it?" he said. "No, not exactly," Nick said. "Why not?" "I don't know," Nick said. "Will you ever go skiing together in the States?" George said. "I don't know," said Nick. "The mountains aren't much," George said. "No," said Nick. "They're too rocky. There's too much timber and they're too far away." "Yes," said George. "That's the way it is in California." "Yes," Nick said. "That's the way it is everywhere I've ever been." "Yes," said George. "That's the way it is." The Swiss got up and paid and went out. "I wish we were Swiss," George said. "They've all got goiter," said Nick. "I don't believe it," George said. "Neither do I." They laughed. "Maybe we'll never go skiing again, Nick," George said. "We've got to," said Nick. "It isn't worthwhile if you can't." "We'll go all right," George said. "We've got to," Nick agreed. "I wish we could make a promise about it," George said. Nick stood up. He buckled his wind jacket tight. He leaned over George and picked up the 2 ski poles from against the wall. He stuck one of the ski poles into the floor. "There isn't any good in promising," he said. They opened the door and went out. It was very cold. The snow had crusted hard. The road ran up the hill into the pine trees. They took down their skis from where they leaned against the wall in the inn. Nick put on his gloves. George was already started up the road, his skis on his shoulder. Now they would have the run home together. Great story. Great story. Like most of Hemingway's, it's kind of weird, but if you look at it closely and read it again and read it again, its weirdness starts to kind of unfold into something really special. And what struck me about this story is that it's about how all good things must come to an end, or at least it certainly is concerned with that. And you really get that here at the beginning in the second paragraph. It says, "The rush and the sudden swoop as he drooped down a steep undulation in the mountainside plucked Nick's mind out and left him only the wonderful flying, dropping sensation in his body." I mean, I know for me, like, my mind is the center of most of my unpleasant experiences in life. I mean, I think it was Mark Twain who said, "I've experienced some truly terrible things in life, and some of them have even happened." And in this moment, Nick is able to escape from that. Plucked Nick's mind out and left him only the wonderful flying, dropping sensation in his body. And they're cruising along and they're having this great time. And I mean, it's interesting how different, they're skiing in Switzerland. And it's interesting how different skiing and Switzerland were in the world of this story written like 100 years ago. Switzerland, you get the sense it's like this kind of dilapidated, like, it's like a snowy Alabama or something where they are, you know. It says like, the road became polished ice, stained orange, and a tobacco yellow. And as they get up to the lodge, it's this weather-beaten building. As they get closer, they see the paint was peeling. You know, there's this girl who they're like both, I don't know, kind of, they're almost insulting, but then they're sort of careful not to insult her. But, you know, she's like this 16 and pregnant is kind of the like modern analogy, I would say, for this girl. And then they're skiing too. I mean, they're having to like hop over fences and stuff, and they're like eating at the same place where there's people doing lumber work. So it's very different on the surface. But then we get to this paragraph here where it says, this is George saying, "Gee, Mike, don't you wish we could just bum together, take our skis and go on the train to where there was good running, and then go on and put up at pubs and go right across the Oberland and up the Valais and all through the Engadine and just take repair kit and extra sweaters and pajamas in our rucksacks and not give a damn about school or anything?" Like, they just don't want to let go of it. You know, they want to keep that feeling bottled up forever, to keep the mind plucked out of their bodies. And then on the second to last page, we see why they can't. "Is Helen going to have a baby?" George said, coming down to the table from the wall. "Yes." And it's just like this brutal conversation with a bunch of one-word answers. "Will you go back to the States?" "I guess so." "Do you want to?" "No." "Does Helen?" "No." George sat silent. He looked at the empty bottle and the empty glasses. It's hell, isn't it? I think, Hemingway took his own life. So I think we can conclude that pretty safely that there's a little bit of Hemingway speaking there, not just his character. It's hell, isn't it? Nick says, no, not exactly. Why not? I don't know. Because it's too hard to live that way if you think that it's hell. And at the end, they just have the run together home. I don't know. I'm not sure that Hemingway's like coming out and making a claim so much as just sort of like sinking you into these feelings of like a good vacation and the cares and worries of life that you're trying to get away from when you're on that vacation. But why this story stood out to me and why I wanted to start this channel with it is all kind of summarized neatly in this line here. There's nothing really can touch skiing, is there? Nick said. The way it feels when you first drop off on a long run. Huh, said George. It's too swell to talk about. It's funny, it's Hemingway saying, you know, his character is saying, it's too swell to talk about, and it's in the middle of this short story that Hemingway's written all about. That feeling that's supposedly too swell to talk about. Sort of a random parallel, but you get a lot of this from like Zen literature too, a lot of Zen masters who say beautiful, eloquent things and then say how stupid it is to try to say things. So Hemingway's, I don't know, sort of a spiritual companion to those guys there, but that's what this channel is going to be about. It's trying to capture the things that are too swell to talk about by talking about them. Reading just stories that have stuck with me and stories that make me feel like Nick here. Plucked Nick's mind out and left him only the wonderful flying, dropping sensation in his body. So please come back next time, and the dog should be back by then too. Thanks.